Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and salam sejahtera. The aim of this video is to do reflection on chapter 2, information. Okay, as usual, for the reflection, I will touch only certain topics in this chapter, which is I consider essential for you to understand, right? So I think we start with a few questions that need to answer throughout the chapters. Which is number 1, what is information in IT investment context? Number 2, why we need to know the importance of information when we deal with IT strategy? And the third one is why the information is so important to your company. Okay, in this chapter, we want to understand how IT can be used to collect data, then to analyze data and transform it to valuable information, so that your company can use it to strategize and compete with its competitors or archivals. All right. So we start with a recap about 3 lenses for IT strategy. Actually, in order for you to spot any opportunity for your company, you have 3 questions to answer. Okay. The first one, how IT is affecting your entire industry. The second one is your company place in it. And the third one is your IT assets creates a sustainable competitive advantage. So to help you to answer these questions, there are 3 lenses of IT strategy that you have to know. Okay, it is about 3 lenses, which is the level of zoom. Okay, the level of zoom. That give sharp insight in formulating the IT strategy for your company. This diagram basically show you 3 lenses for you to understand how IT affects your company's competitive landscape. The first one, we call it 5 forces model. Okay, this lens is like a telescope for you to zoom out to the level of the industry that your company in is. Okay, it is basically helps you to understand how IT is altering the rules of competition for every company in your industry, including your archivals. Okay, so from here you could see how IT affecting the entire industry, right? So the second lens is value chain. This lens is like your magnifying glass. Okay, from this value chain, you can zoom in to compare your firm with your archivals. Okay, it's about how your company and your archivals create value. And from the value chain, you could be able to recognize where your company can use IT to reimagine how it earns its keeps. All right. So the third one is a competitive litmus test. This lens is like your microscope. You can use competitive litmus test to zoom in on an individual IT assets, right? So that you would know whether the IT asset can offer a sustainable competitive advantage over your archivals, right? So in summary, the 5 forces model focus on industry, which is about how IT alter your entire industry, and the value chain focus on your company versus your competitors or archivals. Okay, it is about how your company creates value versus your archival. And the last one, competitive litmus test, focus on IT asset in your company, which is about how IT asset creates and sustains a competitive advantage. Okay. That's all for this diagram. The three lenses for IT strategy. Okay, now let us focus on lens number 1, 5 forces model. I think this diagram is a bit messy, but never mind, we try to understand what it's all about. Okay, let us see how the IT affects 5 forces. As you can see in this diagram, fierceness of competition is driven by bargaining power of your customer, bargaining powers of your suppliers, uh, by a trade of new entrants, and a trade of substitutes. Okay, so from this model, it shows the impact of IT on your industry. All right. So let's see the first one. IT can increase transparency. Okay, it is about the internet can increase the transparency of suppliers, uh, cost of for firms, and market price for customer. Okay, for example, you can use internet uh, uh, to know which suppliers offer the cheapest price. Okay, for example, here you use Amazon. Okay, uh, so the second one is IT can erase geography. It's about consumer access to a broader array of sellers, which increase the fierceness of competition in industry. So the third one, IT can blur industry boundaries. It's about the trifecta, causing a growing variety of previously independent industries to converge. For example, Skype services substitute long-distance telephony. Okay, smartphone apps substitute photocopiers, and smartphones substitute cameras. Okay, it's about the trifecta, right? Please try to remember what the trifecta is. Okay, I have explained in the chapter 1 video. Okay, trifecta is three IT-centric drivers that fracture the industries, which are digitization, infusion, and ubiquity. Right? Don't forget about what is the trifecta is. Okay, the last impact is IT can enable legacy-free business models. Okay, it's about IT can lower conventional entry barriers, such as the capital needed to enter an industry. So it enables the business models without the legacy burdens of incumbent firms. This example, Internet-enabled kiosk has allowed Redbox to meet the needs of video rental customers without the need for thousands of stores and employees. Okay, so in summary, for this diagram, okay, you are able to know what make industry attractive or unattractive, or whether the industry is a profit potential or not. Okay, I think that's all about this diagram. Okay, this diagram illustrates a model of formulating the company's margin, right? Profit margin is the oxygen for firms or company to survive. So the true test for competitive advantage is your margin must be greater than archival margin. And the margin uh, is equal to how much customers pay minus how much your product cost. Okay, substitutes, new entrants, customer power are the factors that will lessen your margin, while supplier powers will increase your margin, right? So in summary, fiercer competitions squeezes margins. and the survival of your company in the fierceness of competitions are depending on your margin, right? Two major factors that could increase and decrease your margin are the customer pay, which is your revenue, and product price, which is your cost. Okay. Okay, now we go to lens number 2, value chains. As I mentioned earlier, value chains focus on your company versus your archivals. Okay, so the strategy is fundamentally about how your firm will deliver more value than your archivals. And the value creation is about making your firm's outputs worth more than inputs, better than your archivals. And your company's value chain is the lens for you to understand how your company creates value. So you have to think it as a prevailing business model. Okay, look at here. It is a series of linked activities that your company performs, each of which ideally adds value that your customers are prepared to pay for. Okay, so the primary activity are shown as a generic value chain, which are the company's bread and butter activities that create a product or service. Okay, which involve inbound logistics for getting raw materials, all right, operation that convert them into a finished product or services, outbound logistic for getting them to customers, marketing, okay, and after sale service. All right, so the first three activities fall under supply management umbrella, and the last two is under demand management. Okay, each activity in a value chain can involve multiple line function. Okay, which is the company's business processes course card function, and each step has physical plus informational components, which trifecta increasing it. Again, I hope you can still remember the trifecta, which is the digitization, the infusion, and ubiquity. Right? Okay, the activities in value chain are the building blocks of a strategy, which bear all the cost and differentiation. So you can use IT instrumental to tailor value chain to your company's strategic aspiration. Okay. Okay, using lens number 2, you can also see the value stream, right? A value stream basically is a collection of value chains of multiple firms or companies. As you can see in this diagram, the raw materials is supplied by suppliers, okay, to your company, uh, your firm, for creating a product, which then will distribute to retailers, distribution channel, and wholesaler, for sale to customer. Okay, in IT, there is a software called supply chain management system, where we can use to manage and monitor the supply chain activities in your company, right? So with supply chain management, we can monitor and manage the flow of materials, information, and money by upstream and downstream your value stream. Okay. Okay, this model basically show you how you can use IT to transform your company's value chains, right? IT can alter value chain in one of two places. Number one is content of individual steps and their linkages. All right. So you can use IT to transform how your company does one discrete step in its value chain, either by lowering cost, which is operational effectiveness, or increasing value added in it. You can also use IT to transform the linkages by disintermediating companies from your value stream or coordinating steps within your company's value chain, as well as with companies upstream and downstream in your value stream. Okay, the code for this video is 4918. Okay, this diagram shows this intermediation use IT to reconfigure a value stream, which means they use IT to remove the intermediaries or middlemen and change the linkages of value stream. Okay, this diagram illustrates how the margin for $100 books were historically split among firms in the publishing industry. And the example is Amazon has used IT to alter this structure by bypassing all firms between publishers and the book buyer by passing orders directly to publishers. It is then passed on most of the savings to consumers who will pay 30% less. So this model of cutting out middlemen, it is actually has been successfully replicated in many industries. For example, we have a Grab, okay, which is the taxi driver use their own cars as a taxi. Okay. Okay, now we move on to lens number 3, the competitive litmus test. Okay, basically you have to understand that being competitive is one thing and staying competitive is another thing. So the competitive litmus test will help you to judge whether an IT asset, which is the apps, the infrastructure element, and the data asset, can produce a sustainable competitive advantage or not, right? Because to create a competitive advantage using IT asset is different from to sustain it. So in order to create a competitive advantage, an IT asset must be able to produce something that valuable and rare, uh, meaning that valuable in your industry and rare among your archivals. And in order to sustain a competitive advantage after you have created it, you have to make sure that your archivals must not be able to copy it, which is inimitable, and your archival must not be able to achieve the same ends differently, which is non-substitutable. Okay. Now let us find out what are the IT assets that are able to produce competitive advantage. Right. Number one, IT assets that are valuable but not rare. Okay, IT infrastructure is not rare even when it is valuable. So it rarely generates a competitive advantage. It has operational value but not strategic value, and it is less a competitive necessity because it provides a foundation for other IT assets that might generate a competitive advantage. Okay, the second one is IT assets that are valuable and rare. Okay, its IT apps and data are rarely sustainable competitive advantages. For example, purchase apps can often be imitated by your archivals. This limitation destroys their rarity. Okay, meaning that to sustain a competitive advantage which is built on purchased IT apps, you must add valuable new IT capabilities faster than your archivals can copy them. Okay. However, this approach normally can be financially exhausting, and it is usually unsustainable. So, purchased apps, therefore, can create but rarely sustain a competitive advantage. Okay, as a summary, the IT asset must be valuable and rare to create a competitive advantage, and the IT asset must be inimitable and non-substitutable to sustain the competitive advantage. Okay, so I think that's all for reflection on chapter 2, and I hope you all can understand what is the three lenses for IT strategy, and know how you can assist your company to be competitive and stay competitive in the industry. I think with that, I will end my presentation. Right? Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.